They logged on to reconnect with old school friends and maybe find new ones, only to discover they were giving away their private data. More Facebook users are quitting after realising that its privacy policy has become confusing, time-consuming and controversial. Internet social networks, have they turned into a trap for the users and a valuable source of customers for advertisers? This is Inside Story. Hi there, welcome to the programme. I'm Hamish McDonald. How often do you come across someone who doesn't have a Facebook account? More than 400 million people now have active Facebook profiles, but how many of them actually know what they've signed up to? Facebook's privacy policy used to be just over 1,000 words about 5 years ago. Now it's almost 6,000 words, more than any other social networking site and longer than the US Constitution. Regulators around the world are now intervening to ensure that websites such as Facebook are not breaching privacy laws. They're also looking at shifting the responsibility from users to the companies themselves. Well, this issue has been gaining momentum since the end of last year when Facebook changed its privacy settings system. Suddenly, the default setting was essentially public rather than private, which meant that some users' information instantly became visible to the web. Users were forced to go through some 50 settings with more than 170 different options to protect their privacy. Facebook says the aim was to give users precise control over their personal information. Well, Aisha's one of our resident web experts. What's Facebook done, Aisha, to change the way you can make your account private?
What they've done is they've introduced a new set of privacy settings that enable users to customize exactly who can see what.
But some people, though, have said that it's more complicated than what it was before. Is that the case?
That can be the case. Let me walk you through it. If you go through your account and click on privacy settings, people might argue that it is a little bit more complicated just because you have additional options now. For example, you're given the option for everyone to see a certain access of your profile. Friends of friends can see it, only friends, or you can customize it to create a friends list.
The criticism was, though, that Facebook changed it without really giving people enough explanation. But they did tell people, though, didn't they? They
did tell people. They created notifications and they created a screenshot of what it would look like when they did eventually launch these changes. But a lot of people argue that it wasn't detailed enough, or it surprised people when they suddenly logged in and were told that your privacy settings have now been changed. And old settings, whatever your old settings were, didn't transfer to the new settings. So anything that was private before suddenly became public, and that upset a lot of people.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, controversially said the age of privacy is now over. But in the website's defence, he also said that doing a privacy change for 350 million users is not the kind of thing that a lot of companies would do. But we viewed that as a really important thing, to always keep a beginner's mind. And what would we do if we were starting the company now? And we decided that these would be the social norms now, and we just went for it. Important to note that we did invite Facebook to participate in this debate, but they weren't able to provide somebody to join our panel. But on our panel, we have from Boston, Gillian York. She's a project coordinator at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society. In San Francisco, Ben Parr, he's co-editor of Mashable.com. That's a web-based social media news service. And in San Jose, Augie Ray. He's a senior analyst of social computing at Forrester Research. That's a technology and market research company. Thanks all of you for joining us on today's programme. Let's start in Boston with Gillian York. Is Facebook taking advantage, do you think, of young web users who don't necessarily know what they're getting themselves into by signing up and putting their details and photos online?
Yes, I mean, it does strike me that way. I do feel that, Zuckerberg's vision of transparency is wonderful, and for many of us, it's absolutely great to be able to put all of that information out there. But I also think that a lot of young users, a lot of users in other countries, are just simply not prepared for these new settings.
Ben Parr, what's your view on this? Do you think it's the case that Facebook is taking advantage of people that don't necessarily know what they're doing?
I don't think that's Facebook's intention. The issue here is understanding that Facebook itself is a platform for sharing information, and we have to probably put less blame on Facebook and do more to educate other people about what you put on the web can be found by anybody.
You've argued essentially, that it's up to the person, the individual. What's your theory behind all of this?
My theory is that Facebook and other forms of social media, they're made inherently for sharing. You can put as many privacy settings as you want on Facebook, but in the end, it just takes one friend saving one picture and then posting it on another message board for all those privacy walls to go down. And so while Facebook has some blame in all of this, really we need to be better educating the youth, and we need to be better educating people all across the world about how privacy on the web works and how you can protect it.
Augie Ray in San Jose, what's your view on that?
Well, I think Facebook has done a poor job of managing users' expectations. But, you know, it is, in the end, a business, and people are enjoying the service for free, sharing billions of updates, billions of photos. It should come as no surprise that there's an expectation that they are going to monetize and make money, and the way they can do that is by sharing information with advertising partners. So in the end, to me, the issue is less about privacy than it is of control. People want control over their information, and Facebook has not made it clear how consumers can exert that control. They've made it somewhat complex with their settings. And in the end, the biggest question of all in all this is their opt-out versus opt-in for some of their instant personalization partners. So there really are several key issues here around the issue of control. But in the end, I don't think privacy is that big an issue, because people are, in fact, sharing where they are, what they eat, what they're doing. They share photos, and they do this in the most public of ways. And I agree with Ben, it's up to the individual to understand the implications of what they're sharing.
Gillian York, your response to that, it's really up to the person to deal with it themselves.
You know, I tend to agree with that. I think that it is up to us to educate people about that, but at the same time, I do think that Facebook, like Augie said, has done a poor job of managing user expectations. Lots of users were not prepared for this change, and I do believe that it would have been better off as an opt-in policy rather than an opt-out policy.
I mean, has it all gone wrong for Facebook? Is it now going in the same direction as, for example, MySpace, a website that took off massively only to kind of virtually disappear?
I think it's too late for that.
MySpace's problem had to do with a lack of innovation.
Ben Parr, I think you're trying to get in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to agree. It's not. Facebook is not going the way of MySpace. MySpace lost because they weren't able, as Augie said, to innovate and to grow new products. And what Facebook's doing is quite the opposite. They're pushing the boundaries. They're putting out new features, not all of which jive with the users. I remember back in 2006 when they launched Facebook Newsfeed. There was a revolt. Everyone was against it. But now, a couple years later, no one could imagine Facebook without it. It was a major innovation. It helped make Facebook the powerhouse that it is.
Is the whole concept of privacy on social networking sites in some way contrary to developing them, to advancing them, making them, if you like, a commercial entity rather than just something that sort of functions on the internet?
That's a tough one. I think in some ways that's true because social media and social networking is designed by nature to share information, and information can get outside of the walls that you make, unlike, say, like e-commerce, which is designed to be very secure. And because of that design, I think that's why you see so many leaks. That's why you see so many kids and put out pictures of themselves drinking, and they somehow leak because they didn't realize that it's that easy for their information to get outside of the walls of Facebook.
Augie Ray, you mentioned earlier that ultimately you don't think privacy is that big a deal on these sorts of websites, but there's plenty of people that disagree with that. I mean, police in Australia, for example, are warning people not to put photographs on. These are children under the legal age, if you like, putting whole reams of information about themselves into the public eye, and that has and can lead to crimes.
Well, certainly children under the legal age is a different issue. They have rights that need to be protected. They can't always understand the implications of what they are doing. But when it comes to adults,
you're saying it's a different issue. Then why don't these? Sorry to interrupt you, but if it is a different issue, why don't these websites treat young people differently to the way they treat adults? I mean, as far as I'm aware, there's no differentiation as far as Facebook's concerned if you're 12 or 55.
Well, that's not exactly true. Here in the U.S., we have laws about the kind of personally identifiable information you can collect on children under a certain age. I believe that's 13. So they are definitely treated differently. Older children, it's going to become an issue of making sure that they understand what the implications of what they're sharing are. But again, I just want to repeat that any adult can give permission to any site to share their information and to collect their information. That's why I see it as an issue of perception and control. Privacy is clearly important. I mean, you can violate privacy, but people are willingly giving up their right to privacy every day, billions of them, billions of times, and hundreds of millions of people by sharing the information that they're sharing. Is it the role of government to stop people from sharing what they wish to share? I don't think so. It's the role of government to protect people, to make sure that they understand what is being shared and what isn't. And this comes back to Facebook's role in making sure they manage these changes, because at this point they have some people upset because they don't understand what is being shared under what circumstances, but they even have some of the companies that work with Facebook upset because those companies have a commitment to people's privacy, and being associated with these problems is embarrassing. And all of this can be solved if Facebook does a better job of being transparent about what is being shared, under what circumstances, helping people to better set their privacy settings, and educating consumers about what all of this means. Because in the end, let me just say this, is that if you ask a consumer, do you want to see what your friends are reading on CNN and be able to share what you read on CNN, people will say, why, yes, I would like that. That would be really interesting experiences for me as I surf the web. But if you ask people, do you want Facebook sharing your information with third parties, people will say no.
But
so I think this is a matter of as much perception as it is law. That isn't to say it isn't legal.
But is there not a greater role for government here? Because, I mean, you're saying that governments must protect people, but you don't really think they should overregulate it. The point is, isn't it, that governments around the world, authorities, have not kept up with the changes in the way we use technology.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. And we see this in many different ways, not just in the issue of privacy. So I agree with that. And listen, nothing that Facebook is going to do is going to prevent the government in the United States and other governments around the globe from taking action about privacy. So I agree there is a role here for government to protect privacy. But what Facebook can do is change the game by being more transparent and working more directly with consumers. Because again, no government in the world is going to prevent people from sharing what they wish to share, provided they give their permission to Facebook or to any other site to share it. So this is largely an education and a lobbying effort that Facebook has to do a better job of than they have done in the past.
All right. Let's just pause for a moment there, the discussion, because we've put out a request on Twitter for questions for our panel, just to get some more people involved in this discussion if we can. Let's just take a look at some of those questions that we've received. Troy Barrett said earlier this year, Mark Zuckerberg said privacy was no longer a social norm. What do you think about that? We'll put that to the panel in a moment. Also, we heard Inside My Mind, that's the name of that's the handle of this Twitter user. Inside My Mind said that anyone can post a photo, video of you, and you can only delete the tag. Shouldn't consent be required? And our final question via Twitter from IBM Kafka, they asked, to what extent does Facebook cave into political governmental pressure when some groups are deleted? I'm interested just to gauge your view on the whole consent issue. Gillian in Boston, what's your view on that? I mean, people don't really control a lot of what is said, posted about them online. I mean, I might choose not even to go on Facebook, but people could still put information about me on there.
Right, and that's not unique to Facebook. I mean, Flickr also has tagging mechanisms. I can take a picture of a stranger in a strange city and post that on the internet with no repercussion. I mean, that's absolutely not unique to Facebook, nor is it new.
But do you think that social media websites are going to have to deal with that in a more effective way? Because clearly there are people that are upset about the way they're being represented online without their consent.
Well, sure. And I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are problematic about Facebook in comparison to other sites. Facebook requires users to use their real name, which is pretty unique to the social media sphere. And, that's problematic in that I can't go on Facebook using a pseudonym or a fake name and, put pictures of my friends, pictures of myself. I have to identify myself using my real name. And I think that's very alarming to me that I don't have the choice. I either do that or I get kicked off Facebook.
What about in countries where certain things are illegal? I mean, there are people that must be concerned about how they're represented in their home country, potentially.
Can I jump
Do you
in
think
on that
that
one?
social networking sites need to deal with that in a more effective way, though? I mean, to ensure that their users in perhaps more conservative countries with sort of stricter rules on social issues like, for example, Saudi Arabia?
The 2 points I was bringing up from Jillian was, one, part of the problem is that the world has just changed. And the world has changed to a point where anyone with a camera phone, which is almost everybody in the developing world at this point, can just take a picture and post it online, can take a video, post it online. And to expect that the thousands of social media websites can be regulated and protected so that your picture and your identity don't go online is just not realistic anymore. And so we have to adapt to what the new situation is, which is your information is going to be, your picture, your information is going to be posted online. How do you handle yourself in public settings? How do you handle yourself after the information is posted?
So, Ben Parr, you agree with the Mark Zuckerberg argument that privacy is just no longer the social norm, and therefore people just have to deal with that?
I would say that privacy has evolved and changed. It has become something that is, I guess, tougher to defend. And I think that because of that, yes, society does have to adapt around what the technology has done. We can't expect to have the same kind of privacy or the same way we protected privacy even 5 years ago.
Augie Ray, is that reasonable? Why should people just have to accept a new reality that they don't necessarily agree with?
Well, I mean, technology has always changed the way we lived, and I tend to agree with Ben. I'm not sure I'd go as far as Mark has said and said that privacy is no longer a norm. I think certain aspects of privacy, it comes back to being able to control what you can, but we live in a world where, as Ben points out, people are sharing a great deal of information. They can take pictures at a moment's notice. We could pass laws to say people can't post pictures, I suppose. That won't work. And so, this is the reality that we live in. And if all you have to do is look at the last 15 years to see the way the internet has changed the way we live, or go back over the last 50 years and see the way television has changed the way we live. You think about a time when we didn't have mobile phones at all and what that has done to our society. So this is part of an evolving change. And while I agree that Mark Zuckerberg is onto something when he says that privacy has at least changed, I would not go so far as to say that the norm is that it no longer exists. But clearly, this is the world we live in and the things that we have to face. And I don't know how you can regulate around that. Again, are we going to pass laws that say you can't post photos? Are we going to pass laws that say you can't tag? Are we going to pass laws that say that it's the social media sites that are responsible for the literally billions of photos that are posted every month? I don't think that we can do that, not effectively. And so it comes back to, again, making sure that you are monitoring what you are doing in the social web, making sure that you understand what your friends are doing with your information, and doing what you can to set your privacy settings and make sure that you're sharing things that you are totally comfortable with sharing.
All right, let's just broaden out this discussion then for a moment, because although Facebook's come under scrutiny over its privacy policies, it's not the only website accused of violating user data. Recently, both Google and Yahoo have apologised for the abuse of private information of their users. In the case of Yahoo, the disclosure of information led to the arrest of a number of Chinese dissidents after confidential data was passed on to the Chinese government. And last week, Germany brought Google to the world's attention after discovering it collected data from users and used it in Street Views. All right, let's go to Gillian in Boston. In some ways, new media sites are selling out their users, aren't they?
That's a tough question. I mean, yes, I would, yes.
I mean, there is a solid argument there. There is a solid point there, isn't there, that they are selling out their users, the very people that they depend on for their success. And unless they look after the people that are their traffic, essentially, they're going to die out.
You know, I mean, with Facebook, I think this comes back into the particular argument that with Facebook, as opposed to other sites, you don't have as many choices as to who you can be and how you can represent yourself. And I think that that is what's most concerning about Facebook's issues.
I mean, why does Facebook, I mean, is there a fundamental principle, according to Facebook, that you shouldn't be able to represent yourself how you want to?
Yes, there is. Facebook requires that you use your real name. It's their policy, and they have been known to deactivate the accounts of people who use fake names or even fake-sounding names.
Right.
And they have no appeals process for that.
But there's an argument to be made here that being forced to use one's real name is also a safety measure. I mean, we certainly have seen headlines over the last couple of months about cyberbullying being done by people who have posted fake names, people who hide behind pseudonyms. I think one of the things that people like about Facebook, one of the reasons people feel safer, ironically, in this discussion around privacy, is that people have to represent them as themselves. You know, we certainly saw in the early days of social media a lot of focus on the fact that people were representing themselves to be other than they were. This was dangerous to teenagers and, you know, creating embarrassing and potentially life-threatening situations. And so we've got this situation now where people have to be themselves on Facebook. And I actually think that that adds a modicum of safety to what happens on Facebook. And I guess I'd also like to add, earlier you said that they're selling out their users who've made them a success. But again, these are for-profit enterprises. Facebook has over 400 million, approaching 500 million users, but none of those users are paying a penny for that service. So they aren't so much selling out their people as trying to use this data to give, let's flip the negative into a positive. Selling out their users means that they are sharing data so that people, as they surf Facebook and other sites, can see ads that are relevant to them, not irrelevant ads. You could argue that that's a positive. Certainly the sharing that goes on with third-party sites can be turned as a negative, which is the violation of privacy, but there's also a positive. People have shared over 1/3 likes of IMDb movies because they like to share the movies that they like. So
okay,
I think you've got to be careful about
essentially what you're saying is that you can get a free product in return for all of your own personal data being handed over to advertisers. That doesn't necessarily sound like a good deal. Gillian York, I think you were trying to get in there with a response.
Yeah, I mean, just back to the point about using real names. I mean, I think in some cases you're right, in the cases of cyberbullying, but I also think that a lot of these views being presented are very American-centric. We've got, you know, people all over the world are using Facebook. I don't have the stats in front of me, unfortunately, but when you look at Facebook's demographics, you've got activists in other countries, you've got people who need to hide their identities for their safety, and I think, you know, maybe Facebook's not the right platform for that, but if Facebook keeps growing, continues to grow, and continues to sort of push out its competitors naturally, then where can these other people go?
All right, I think we're going to have to leave this debate there, unfortunately.
There will always be other places, though.
Gents and lady, I'm sorry that we're going to have to leave it there. It's been a fantastic discussion and one that probably will continue. Let me just thank all of you for joining us. In Boston, Gillian York from the Berkman Center for Internet and Society. In San Francisco, Ben Parr from Mashable.com. And in San Jose, Augie Ray. All of you, we appreciate your time, and no doubt this debate will continue online.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to you, our audience, for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. You can use email. It's a bit old-fashioned, but try it anyway. InsideStory@aljazeera.net. All right, from me and the team here at Inside Story, thanks for watching. Goodbye.